Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the May Focus series. Today, we're focusing on Client Portal Suggest. So you'll know that we launched Client Portal last year, and that gave you the ability to share asset map with your clients via the Client Portal. And not only the map, you could also share the balance sheets, signals, the members of the household, and even asset map reports. But probably the number one request that we received since launching the client portal is, can clients edit their map on the portal? Can they tell us what has changed in their financial life? So we're really excited to be launching Client Portal Suggest that will give clients exactly that ability. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how it works, and then we'll jump into Asset Map and I'll take you through it live. So the key point is that it's controlled by the planner. So you turn on Client Portal for a client, they don't automatically have access to the portal. But once you've allowed a client to register and enabled them to access the Client Portal, you will now have the ability to turn on Suggest mode. And what that means is when the client logs into the portal, they'll be able to suggest changes, whether that's an income that has changed or the description of a specific financial that they want to change, whether they want to delete a specific investment asset, loan that's no longer applicable for them, they'll be able to do that. And they can even add assets, add investments, edit and add the members of their household, as well as entities, any businesses or trusts that they want to add to the picture. So once you turn on that client suggest mode, clients can fully edit and change their map. However, it won't automatically update the map on your side. So one of the key points is that when the client is suggesting changes, you will be notified via email and in-app that a particular client is suggesting changes, and you'll then be able to log onto your asset map, view the changes that the client is suggesting, and either accept or reject the change. So it's fully controlled by the planner, but it really can enhance that, especially review process, where now you can say to a client prior to review, log in, have a look at your map, tell us what's changed. You then receive those suggestions and you can engage with the clients around the changes, accept or reject the changes based on the conversation. And then on your side and the client side, it will reflect the new map with the changes that have been accepted. So let's take a look at how it's going to work. I'm going to just share my map. Right. Perfect. So here we have the James family. Now, the James family, Arthur has access to the client portal already, but we haven't opened it up for Chrissy as yet. And I wanted to start by just recapping on client portal. How do you register a client for client portal and give them access to the portal? The first step is just clicking on the individual in the middle of the page. And you'll see when I click on Chrissy here, it pops up on the right-hand side, and there's a couple of tabs: Essentials, Details, Notes, and of course, Client Portal. So here under the Client Portal, this is where I can set it up for Chrissy. And there's two things that I have to decide first. Do I want Chrissy to register with a specific email address? If I do, then I simply check this box and put in the email address that I want her to register with. Or am I happy for her to register with whichever email address she prefers? That's question one. That email address will become the client's username. So when they log in future, they'll use that email as their username. So one idea is, if you are going to stipulate the email, then at least you can remind them if they ever forget which email they used. The next question you need to ask is, which permission set? What do you want the client to be able to view when they log onto the portal? And you'll see that at the moment, there's two default permission sets. The one is all available, and that gives the client access not only to the map, but also relationships, financials, signals, their balance sheet, policy summary, beneficiaries, and shared reports. If you've shared reports to the portal, the client can view those. If you select View Asset Map View Only Access, then the client can only view the asset map page itself. So those are the two default permission sets. And now with the launch of Client Portal Suggest, we'll be adding a third, and that one is called Asset Map Report Suggesting. By turning that on, you're giving a client access to Suggest mode. But let's say, for example, I'm setting Chrissy up for the first time and I want her to be able to view everything. I can select that. I can also create my own permission sets. So these are just the 3 standard default permission sets in the system, but you can build your own permission sets. For example, if you wanted a client to have access to the map and the balance sheet, or the map signals on the balance sheet, you can build up a number of permission sets that you can then apply to clients, and that's what they'll see on the portal. And I'll show you in a minute how we do that. But for now, to set up client portal access, I decide with regards to which email address, I select the permission, how much do I want the client to be able to see, and then I simply select create invite. What this does now is it creates an invite, a link that I can share with the clients. And I can copy that link and send it to the client, say via email, and they're guided through a registration process. So they'll click on the link, it will verify their email address, and then they'll set up their own password. What do they want their password to be for their client portal? It's a once-off registration process. They only have to do that once. Thereafter, they will have access to the portal and they can log in at any time and view whatever you have given them permission to view on their client portal. So that's how we create client portal or register a member for the client portal. But now with Client Portal Suggest, how do we turn that on for a client? So here we have Arthur. And we can see under Arthur's Client Portal access, he is already an active user. That means he's gone through the registration process already, and he has ability to view everything. Now I'm just going to pop across into Arthur's Client Portal. So I've logged in as Arthur on the Client Portal, and this is his view when he logs into the portal. So you can see here, and on the left-hand side, he can view asset map. He can look at his relationships, who are all the members of his household. He can look through his financials. He can also select and deselect individuals depending on who he wants to look at. He can view his signals across the household, as well as reports like the balance sheets, the policy summary, his beneficiaries, and even the reports that I've shared to the client. He can view here. There's also a great little summary at the top here if the client clicks on household, where it shows their map, but it also shows some key financial figures at the bottom and highlights, where the client is from a signals point of view and who the members of the family are. But you'll notice that with this access, if Arthur were to select any of these financials, he cannot make any changes. This is where Client Portal Suggest comes in. So now if I go back into the model here and I want to change Arthur's permissions to give him the ability to actually suggest changes, I would go into this permission set, select suggesting, and click update. Now, if I go across over to Arthur again, on his client portal, I'm just going to refresh the screen, you'll see that this view has now changed. Give it a second. There we go. And you'll see this bar has popped up at the bottom so that Arthur knows he is now in suggest mode. From here, he can start to make changes. And he can do that by, let's say his income has changed. He can click on that income. He can update the amounts. He could also update, some of the wording to whatever he would prefer. And once he has made that change, you'll see it highlights the block for Arthur showing this is the change you made, and it was an edit change. If you were to say, something is no longer available, maybe he doesn't have this term life anymore, he could simply delete it, and you'll see that it'll show up with a little red X to say I'm deleting it. So it works very similarly to the draft functionality that we have in Asset Map, where you can show clients different outcomes by showing their current picture and then reflecting the changes as sort of an overlay. You can also add investments. So let's say he wants to add, some sort of savings fund. Let's say I've got a savings with the bank and it's £20,000 and create. And then we'll see that pops up here on the left, again, highlighted in pink. Arthur can also hide the changes here at the bottom, so you can select hide and show to view the changes that he's made. But you can see that it hasn't changed the actual map yet. It's more of an overlay at this point. If I now go across to my asset map as the planner, we'll see, and I'm just going to refresh the screen here, we'll see that I've got some in-app notifications on this little bell here at the top. It says 3 new notifications, and it's letting me know that Arthur has modified, deleted, and added additional investments or financials in their household, so suggested changes. You will also receive that via email so that you're always aware of what changes the client is suggesting. Directly from here, I can click on that James family and you'll see it pops up right at the top to say there's 3 pending changes. Would you like to view them? And I can select view changes. And now it's showing me on my advisor asset map the changes that the client suggested in the client portal. Again, it's got these same notations so I can see which ones are highlighted, what changes the client has made. I can also hide the changes at the bottom or show changes just like Arthur could on the client portal. But now, if you think of it from a process point of view, you may send the client an email prior to review to say, please log in to your client portal, let us know what's changed, and you're notified of these changes. You may want to accept or reject the changes now, or you may want to do it later. If you want to do it, you just click on any one of the pink or highlighted blocks, and you'll see at the bottom that you can commit or reject the change. Okay, so you can choose. Or if you maybe don't want to review it now, but you'd rather wait until you're in that engagement with the clients and work through the changes with them and unpack and understand more about the changes, you can always close this and you'll see we go back to the original map. And at any point in time, you can again apply the changes that the client has suggested. And you do that through the drafts feature. So if I click on this colorful plus and I select drafts, there will always be a draft under existing drafts now, and that'll be called Client Portal Suggest. And this is the draft of any changes that the client has made on the client portal. At any point in time, this draft will show those to you. So I can select it and apply, and there again, I can see the changes. Now, let's say I want to go ahead and accept them. I just simply click on the highlighted block and say commit change. Or if it's a block that is maybe, being removed that the client has deleted, you'll see that it'll say, do you want to delete the instrument or do you want to reject the change and keep it? And you can decide to delete or reject the change depending. Okay, let's just give that a second. And then let's do the same on the savings. Let's say I want to commit that change by creating that investment. Right. So now that all the changes have been made, I'm still in that client portal suggest draft, but there's no more changes to accept or reject, so I can close it. And if I pop back across to the client portal for Arthur and just give that a refresh, then we'll see that those changes are now committed and are part of his current plan. There we can see the 65,000. We can see that term insurance has been removed, and we can see the savings over here. All right. So that's how a client portal suggest is going to work. Once you've given a client access to the portal, you'll turn on the permission for suggesting. They'll be able to log into the portal on their side, make all the changes that they want to make. It's going to notify you via email in app, and at any point in time, you can go into that household, view those changes, and accept or reject the change. Okay. Another couple of key points on client portal. Firstly, you may be wondering when looking at a household, who in the household has access to the portal? What do they have access to? At any point in time, you can select a household and click on this edit button here. And then you can select Client Portal. And in this tab, it'll show you all of the members of the household and it'll show you their current status on the portal. So we can see Arthur's active. In other words, he's gone through the registration process. Christy's still pending. We've created the link, but she hasn't yet gone through the process. And all the other members of the household currently do not have access to the client portal. But it also tells me what permission set that the client has access to on the portal, shows me when last the client logged into the client portal. And from here, I can edit. So if I want to change what the client has permission to see, I can at any point in time click on this and update their permission set. I can also at any point in time take away access to the client portal and preview what the client can see. So we can update it, preview, make sure we're happy, change the permission set again, right? How do we share reports to the client portal? If we go down here to reports, you'll see that there's a new tab now called History. And this shows all the reports that have been generated for a particular household and the date it was generated, as well as the type of report. Now, generating a report in ActiveMap doesn't mean it's automatically shared to the client portal, but it means that you have the ability to share it as and when required. And you do that by clicking on this little forward arrow here. And just a note, this will only appear if there's a member of the household that has registered for client portal. But if there is, you can click on that and it'll show you all the members who have access to Client Portal, and you can go ahead and share a particular report to any of those members who have access. And then on their side, they'll receive the report in the portal and they can view it and download it from there. The last one on Client Portal that I want to just work through is how do you create your own permission sets? Now you do that by selecting your initials or picture in the top right-hand corner and select User Preferences. Here you'll see a Client Portal tab again that you can click on, and it'll show you all the current permission sets that are available for clients. So here we can see the all available, we can see suggesting and view only. This one is just one that I've created. But from here, you can create your own permission sets by simply clicking on this Create New button. You can then select what do you want included in a specific permission set. Do you want everything? Do you want just the report suggesting and maybe beneficiaries? And you can have a couple of these permission sets. It doesn't need to be just one. And then once you've created it, selected what you'd like in your permission set, and press create. From then onwards, you can then choose that permission set for a particular client at any point in time. And that is the access they'll have when logging on to the portal. Okay. So just before we wrap up today, I just want to go back in here. Perfect. So I'm sure the next question is going to be, well, when is it going to be available? So Client Portal Suggest will be launched next week, Thursday. So as soon as you log in next week, Thursday, you'll be able to select Suggest mode under the permission set for your clients. And from there, they'll be able to start editing and telling you about what's changed in their lives. And you will immediately start receiving those notifications to say the client is suggesting changes. If we think about this from a review process point of view, I think it really enhances that process. But we need to think about how do we bring it into our review process? What does that pre-review look like? Are we sharing that link with the client, asking them to go in, edit? Do we need to update any templates from our CRM in order to facilitate that? But it can really enhance that pre-review by letting the client go in, make the changes that's happening in their life, and then you make the changes from your side. And then as part of that review conversation, you can engage together around those changes. And it's also important to think about how it's going to change that review conversation, where the client has suggested certain changes, what questions can we prepare beforehand to ask them about the changes that they've made and what that means for them. And then thinking about that post review, what do I want the client to see on the client portal after the review? How do I share the client portal, the client's review report to the client? Do I want to use the client portal for that? So they're not getting it over email, but rather logging in to a secure portal and downloading it as and when. But I really think it's just going to make that entire process just more seamless, digital, but also bring the client into the conversation, both pre and post review, as well as in the engagement itself. All right. So thank you very much for joining today. That's what we